My son invited me on a family vacation, promising to heal old wounds under the African sun. But my plane landed on another continent, where betrayal awaited instead of family. He was shocked to see me with a lawyer upon arrival in the Caribbean. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The front door rattled against its frame as Thorne pushed past me into the living room. His expensive jacket hung wrinkled from his shoulders, and dark circles shadowed his eyes like bruises. I'd been reading peacefully in my armchair when the doorbell rang, but the moment I saw his face, I knew this wouldn't be a social visit. "Dad, we need to talk." He dropped a leather portfolio onto my coffee table with theatrical emphasis. Papers scattered across the polished wood surface, graphs and charts bleeding together in a chaos of desperate ambition. I remained standing by the door, not bothering to close it. The March wind carried the scent of melting snow through the house, mixing with the tension that had followed my son inside. "Another business venture, Thorne?" His hands moved frantically over the documents, organizing them into neat stacks. "This one's different, revolutionary actually. An AI-powered personal assistant that learns your habits, predicts your needs. How much do you want this time?" The question stopped his rehearsed pitch mid-sentence. He looked up from the papers, and for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, desperate, pleading. But that child had been replaced long ago by a man who saw family as investors rather than loved ones. 85,000, it's the last time, I promise. This startup will definitely work." I walked to the window, watching neighbors clear their driveways of the season's final snow. "Thorne, I've already lost 70,000 on your surefire ideas. The delivery app that never launched, that cryptocurrency project that vanished overnight, the wellness platform that lasted 3 months. Those were learning experiences, market research. They were failures that cost me my retirement security." He stood abruptly, knocking over a stack of financial projections. "You never believed in me, not like other fathers. When Marcus Chen's dad invested in his tech company, Marcus Chen had a solid business plan and 5 years of industry experience. You have dreams and other people's money." The words hung between us like a blade. Thorne's face flushed red, the same color it turned when he was 7 and couldn't have his way. But this wasn't a childhood tantrum over toys. This was a grown man demanding I fund his delusions. "This is my chance, Dad, my breakthrough moment." "Your breakthrough moment was supposed to be 3 ventures ago." He gathered the papers with violent efficiency, cramming them back into the portfolio. "Fine. I thought family meant something to you, but apparently money matters more. Family means protecting what I've worked 40 years to build. It means not enabling my son's gambling addiction disguised as entrepreneurship." Thorne stood at the threshold now, his hand gripping the doorframe. "You'll regret this. When I'm successful, when this company goes public, remember that you chose doubt over faith." The door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the windows. I heard his car engine roar to life in the driveway, tires squealing against wet pavement as he sped away. I returned to my armchair, but the book lay forgotten on the side table. The afternoon light had shifted, casting longer shadows across the room. My phone sat face down on the coffee table, and I found myself staring at it, wondering how long the silence would last this time. 2 days of blessed quiet had passed since Thorne's dramatic exit. I'd settled into my morning routine, coffee, newspaper, the simple pleasure of a peaceful breakfast, when my phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. The sound cut through the morning calm like an alarm. The message was brief, but it hit with the precision of a surgical strike. "If you can't fulfill your fatherly duty, you won't see the grandchildren anymore." My coffee cup trembled as I set it down. The ceramic clinked against the saucer with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in my quiet kitchen. I read the message again, then once more, hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But there they were, cold and calculating as the man who'd sent them. The threat brought memories flooding back. Christmas morning 2 years ago, when Rowan had built an entire city from my old wooden blocks. His 7-year-old hands careful and deliberate as an architect. Serena's gap-toothed grin when she'd shown me her first attempt at cursive writing. My name spelled out in shaky letters across construction paper. Those children loved me unconditionally, the way Thorne once had, before money poisoned everything between us. They didn't know about failed startups or family arguments. They knew Grandpa Orin, who kept chocolate in his pockets and told stories about traveling to distant countries. and their mother, Celestea. The woman was a saint for staying married to my son. I'd watched her at family gatherings, gently correcting Thorne's exaggerations, redirecting conversations when he became too aggressive, protecting the children from their father's worst impulses. She taught second grade, and I could see why children loved her. Patience radiated from her like warmth from a fireplace. Good woman he doesn't deserve, I thought, not for the first time. But this ultimatum, this emotional blackmail disguised as paternal disappointment, this had Thorne's fingerprints all over it. He'd learned early that the children were his most effective leverage against me. Birthday parties I'd been uninvited to during previous disagreements. Christmas gatherings that suddenly became immediate family only when I refused to fund his schemes. The pattern was always the same: rejection, anger, punishment through the grandchildren, then eventual reconciliation when he needed something new. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over his contact information. Part of me wanted to call to explain again why I couldn't keep throwing money into his endless pit of ambition. But I'd had this conversation 3 times already. Each explanation fell on ears that heard only refusal, never reason. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the warm air. Spring was coming to Chicago, and with it, the promise of renewal. Perhaps this silence between us was just another season that would eventually change. I placed the phone face down on the counter and returned to my newspaper, though the words blurred together as my mind wandered to 2 small faces I might not see again for months. Sunday afternoon had settled into that peaceful lull when time seemed to move like honey. I was in my study, organizing old travel photographs from my consulting days when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Thorne's name, and I hesitated before answering. "Dad?" His voice carried a warmth I hadn't heard in years. "Listen, I owe you an apology, a huge one." I set down a photograph of the Serengeti sunset. "Thorne, I've been thinking about our argument, about everything I said. You were right about my business ventures. Celestea helped me see that I've been chasing dreams instead of building realistic plans." The admission caught me off guard. In 38 years, I'd rarely heard my son acknowledge being wrong about anything. "I appreciate you saying that. More than saying it, I want to make things right. Dad, I want our family to heal, really heal. So I've planned something special, a family vacation to Namibia, all of us together." Namibia. The word sent excitement coursing through me like electricity. I'd dreamed of Africa since my consulting days, had collected books about the Namib Desert and its impossible orange dunes. The photographs spread across my desk suddenly seemed pale compared to the possibility of seeing such wonders firsthand. Namibia? Thorne? That sounds absolutely wonderful. I knew you'd love it. The thing is, there was a mix-up with the booking system. We couldn't get seats on the same flight, so you'll be flying out tomorrow morning while we leave Tuesday. But we'll all meet at the resort, and then we'll have 2 full weeks together, just family. The enthusiasm in his voice was infectious. I could picture Rowan's excitement at seeing giraffes, Serena collecting shells on the Skeleton Coast. And perhaps, finally, Thorne and I could rebuild what had been damaged between us. The children must be thrilled. Over the moon, Rowan's been reading about desert animals, and Serena packed her suitcase 3 times already. Celestea's excited too. She's never been anywhere more exotic than California. I found myself smiling for the first time in days. This is exactly what our family needs, a fresh start in a beautiful place. Exactly. Now, I'll text you the flight details tonight. Everything's already booked and paid for. You just need to show up at O'Hare with your passport. Thorne, this is incredibly generous of you. It's not generous, Dad. It's necessary. Family should come first, and I lost sight of that. We all did. After we hung up, I sat surrounded by my old travel photographs, but my mind was already in the red desert, watching elephants gather at watering holes, feeling the ancient wind that had carved monuments from sand. The argument from the week before seemed like a distant memory, replaced by anticipation and genuine hope. Tomorrow, I would board a plane to Africa. Tomorrow, my fractured family would begin to heal under endless African skies. I had no idea that tomorrow would take me somewhere entirely different. The euphoria from Thorne's call lingered as I made my way to the study, but something pulled me toward the old photo albums. Perhaps it was the mention of family time, or maybe the promise of Namibia had awakened my dormant wanderlust. I retrieved the leather-bound album from the bottom shelf, its spine cracked from years of handling. Settling into my reading chair, I opened to pages I hadn't visited in months. There we were, father and son against backdrops of international terminals and foreign cities. The photos told a story I'd almost forgotten, one that began in the wreckage of my marriage to Delphine. The first section showed my consulting days in sharp detail. Business cards from Meridian Logistics scattered between personal snapshots, reminders of when I coordinated shipments between 3 continents. 15 days abroad each month, sometimes more. Container manifests from Shanghai to Hamburg, air freight schedules from Sao Paulo to Dubai. I'd built an empire of international trade connections, but at what cost? One photo stopped me cold. 8-year-old Thorne at Chicago O'Hare, clutching a small backpack and wearing the expression of a boy trying to be brave. This was 3 months after Delphine left us, simply vanished one Tuesday morning with a note about finding herself and a forwarding address in California she never used. I remembered his question that day. "Daddy, when will Mommy come back?" The answer had been never, though I couldn't tell him that then. Instead, I'd made a decision that seemed logical at the time. Rather than leave him with babysitters during my business trips, I'd bring him along, give him adventures instead of abandonment, show him the world instead of the empty spaces Delphine had left behind. The next pages chronicled our travels together. Tokyo's neon glow reflected in 10-year-old eyes. Frankfurt's efficient terminals, where Thorne collected airline pins from friendly flight attendants. São Paulo's client dinners, where he charmed Brazilian executives with his precocious questions about global shipping routes. I studied a photo from Dubai, Thorne at 12, confidently navigating the international terminal like a seasoned traveler. He'd learned to pack light, sleep on planes, adapt to time zones with remarkable ease. But looking at his face now, I saw something I'd missed then, a performance quality to his smile, as if he were playing the role of the grateful son rather than simply being one. Had I created this pattern, teaching him that relationships were transactions, that affection came with conditions and expectations? He'd watch me negotiate with customs officials, charm difficult clients, navigate complex international regulations. Maybe I'd accidentally taught him that people were problems to be solved rather than hearts to be cherished. The final photos in this section showed our last business trip together when he was 16. Thorne's disinterest was obvious now. Headphones permanently attached, more fascinated by his phone than the Andes Mountains visible from our hotel window in Bogota. He'd outgrown our adventures, or perhaps finally recognized them for what they were, my attempt to substitute experiences for emotional availability. Maybe I worked too much, gave too little time to what he actually needed. I thought adventures could replace what Delphine took away, but stability can't be purchased with passport stamps. Closing the album, I felt the weight of understanding settle over me like an old coat. Tomorrow's flight to Namibia represented more than a family vacation. It was my chance to finally give him what I should have provided years ago: real presence, authentic connection, the foundation for a relationship built on love rather than logistics. The afternoon light had faded while I'd been lost in memories. I switched on the reading lamp and prepared for dinner, my heart full of hope for the healing that awaited us under African skies. Monday evening found me in the kitchen, clearing the dinner dishes and running through tomorrow's travel checklist in my mind. My passport lay ready on the counter beside my phone, both bathed in the warm glow of overhead lights. The day had passed quietly, a peaceful routine before the adventure ahead. When the phone rang, I glanced at the display expecting perhaps a final detail from Thorne. Instead, Celestea's name appeared, which struck me as unusual. She rarely called me directly. "Orin." Her voice carried intention I'd never heard before, tight and uncertain. "Are you alone right now?" "Of course, dear. Is everything all right? Are the children okay?" A long pause followed, filled with what sounded like shallow breathing. "The children are fine. They're upstairs doing homework. Orin, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how to begin." I set down the dish towel, suddenly alert. "What's troubling you?" "It's about tomorrow, about your trip." Another pause, longer this time. "Orin, I discovered something. Thorne bought you a ticket, but it's only one way." The words didn't register immediately. "One way? That must be a mistake with the booking system." "No." Her voice became stronger, more determined. It's not a mistake. They're not going to Namibia, Orin. We're flying to the Caribbean, St. Lucia. You're being sent to Africa alone. The kitchen seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the counter's edge, processing information that contradicted everything Thorne had told me. Celestea, that can't be right. He specifically said we were meeting at the resort. There is no resort meeting. There never was. She spoke quickly now, words tumbling over each other. I found the real tickets hidden in his office. 4 seats to St. Lucia, departing Tuesday morning. Your name isn't on any of them. My throat felt dry. But why would Thorne do such a thing? Because he needs you out of the country. Orin, he's forged documents to access your bank accounts, legal papers with your signature that I know you never signed. He's been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The betrayal hit like cold water. Not just the deception about the vacation, but the calculated manipulation of my hopes for family reconciliation. Every warm word during Sunday's call had been carefully scripted lies. How did you discover all this? I was looking for our marriage certificate in his office files. We needed it for Serena's school registration. I found everything by accident. Bank documents, travel confirmations, even notes about timing. Her voice broke slightly. Orin, I think he's planning to steal your inheritance while you're stranded in Africa. The full scope of the plot crystallized with stunning clarity. My son hadn't just lied about our destination. He'd engineered an elaborate scheme to rob me while I was helplessly out of reach on another continent. Celestea, why are you telling me this? Why risk your marriage to warn me? She answered without hesitation. Because it's wrong. Because you're a good man who deserves better than this betrayal. Because I couldn't live with myself knowing I stayed silent while someone I respect was being hurt. The courage in her voice humbled me completely. Here was a woman choosing moral principle over personal safety, protecting me at potential cost to her own family stability. Thank you, I said quietly. Thank you for your integrity. We sat in phone silence for a moment, the weight of revelation settling between us like a bridge we'd both choose to cross. I moved from the kitchen to the living room, needing the comfort of my favorite chair for this conversation. The phone felt warm against my ear as Celestea and I continued talking, no longer strangers sharing polite family updates, but allies bound by truth. I've been wrestling with this decision for days, she admitted. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation, but the evidence is overwhelming. You did the right thing, Celestea, the moral thing. I settled deeper into the chair cushions. But I'm worried about your safety now. What happens when Thorne realizes you've warned me? I've thought about that too. He's at a business meeting tonight, supposedly with potential investors, but probably coordinating tomorrow's plan. I waited until he left to call you. Her strategic thinking impressed me. You've been very careful. I had to be. The children's welfare depends on it. A note of steel entered her voice. Orin, I want you to know something about these past few years. Living with Thorne's schemes, his constant manipulations and half-truths. It's been exhausting. He treats family relationships like business negotiations. I've noticed his transactional approach to affection. Exactly. Even with Rowan and Serena, everything becomes conditional. Love based on performance, attention tied to behavior that serves his needs. She paused, then continued with quiet intensity. Those children deserve better. They deserve a grandfather who won't be stolen from them by their father's greed. The conversation revealed layers of dysfunction I'd only glimpsed during family gatherings. Celestea had been protecting the children from Thorne's worst impulses while maintaining the appearance of a family unity. What specific documents did you find? I asked, my business mind engaging with the practical details. Bank authorization forms with your forged signature, power of attorney papers dated from when you supposedly had a medical emergency last year, which never happened. Wire transfer requests ready to be submitted. Her voice grew harder. He even has a fake letter from you authorizing him to manage your affairs due to declining mental capacity. The thoroughness of the deception staggered me. This wasn't impulsive desperation, but calculated fraud requiring months of preparation. The timeline makes sense now, I realized aloud. The emergency call on Sunday wasn't reconciliation. It was ensuring I'd be on that plane tomorrow, out of communication range while he executed the theft. Exactly. He planned to clean out your accounts while you were discovering you'd been abandoned in Namibia with no return flight. We discussed the technical aspects of his scheme, and I found myself admiring Celestea's clear analysis despite my anger at the situation. She'd inherited none of Thorne's manipulative tendencies, possessing instead the logical mind of an excellent teacher. Celestea, I want you to know how much I respect your courage tonight. You're risking your marriage to protect someone who's essentially a stranger. You're not a stranger, Orin. You're family. Real family acts with integrity, not exploitation. Her voice softened. Besides, I've watched you with Rowan and Serena. The way you listen to their stories, remember their interests, bring them thoughtful gifts. That's genuine love, not the conditional affection they get from their father. The conversation continued past 10 o'clock, covering practical concerns about her safety and the children's future. We agreed on communication protocols moving forward and discussed how to protect the family from the fallout of Thorne's schemes. Whatever happens next, Celestea said as we prepared to end the call, I want Rowan and Serena to have their grandfather in their lives. They need at least one adult who loves them unconditionally. They'll always have that, I promised. And they'll always have a mother who demonstrates real moral courage. After we hung up, I remained in the living room chair as the house settled into nighttime quiet. My mind raced with strategic possibilities, examining Thorne's plot from every angle like a logistics problem requiring elegant solution. Tomorrow would not unfold as my son expected. The prey had become aware of the predator, and the game had fundamentally changed. The morning after Celestea's revelation, I moved with the purposeful efficiency I'd developed during 40 years in international logistics. Problems required solutions, and betrayal demanded justice. By 8 o'clock, I was driving through Chicago's downtown traffic toward Clement Price's law office. Clement had been handling my business legal matters since the early 2000s, back when I was still coordinating shipping routes between Shanghai and Hamburg. More importantly, he'd been a friend long enough to understand that when I called at 7 in the morning requesting an emergency meeting, the situation was serious. His office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. The receptionist, a professional woman who'd known me for years, immediately buzzed him when I arrived. Orin, you look like someone died, Clement said, rising from behind his mahogany desk. His gray hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, and his navy suit pressed with military precision. Someone tried to have me killed, actually. My son. The statement hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Clement's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips, his legal mind immediately shifting into crisis mode. Sit down. Tell me everything. For the next hour, I laid out Thorne's scheme with the methodical precision of a logistics briefing, forged documents, fraudulent bank authorizations, the elaborate deception about Namibia versus the Caribbean, Celestea's courage in revealing the truth. Clement listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and whistled softly. This isn't just attempted theft, Orin. This is sophisticated financial fraud with international components. We're talking about multiple felonies. Can you prove it? With the right documentation, absolutely. Let's start with your bank records. We spent the next 3 hours building an ironclad case. The bank provided official transaction histories showing unauthorized access patterns. Signature analysis revealed obvious forgeries on power of attorney documents. Most damning of all, we discovered offshore account transfers that had been initiated but not yet completed. Thorne was waiting for me to be out of communication range. He's been planning this for months, Clement said, reviewing the evidence portfolio we'd assembled. The sophistication suggests professional help, maybe someone with banking connections. What's our next move? Clement's smile carried the satisfaction of a prosecutor who just discovered the smoking gun. We give him exactly what he expects, your absence from the country, except instead of being stranded in Africa, you'll be delivering a very unpleasant surprise in the Caribbean. The travel arrangements took most of the afternoon. We researched Thorne's actual destination through Celestea's information, booked earlier flights to ensure our arrival before his family's vacation began, and coordinated with local legal contacts for potential jurisdiction issues. Justice will be served, I said as we finalized the last details. Indeed it will, and with proper legal documentation of everything. By 4 o'clock, we had plane tickets for the next morning, a complete evidence portfolio, and a strategy that would turn Thorne's carefully planned deception into his worst nightmare. The hunter was about to become the hunted. As we left the office building, Clement carrying his briefcase full of damning evidence, I felt the satisfaction of a well-executed business plan. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation 40 years of fatherhood had been building toward. Dawn broke gray and cold over Chicago as Clement and I met at O'Hare International Airport. The early morning flight gave us the tactical advantage we needed, arriving hours before Thorne's family could land and settle into their false paradise. Security clearance proceeded smoothly despite the legal documents in Clement's briefcase. Professional travelers, we'd learned to pack efficiently for international business over the decades. This trip, however, carried a different energy than our old logistics conferences. "Ready for this, Orv?" Clement asked as we settled into our business class seats. More ready than I've been for anything in years. The flight provided 4 hours of uninterrupted strategic planning. Clement reviewed legal precedents for international fraud cases, while I studied the evidence portfolio we'd assembled. Every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer, every detail of Thorne's elaborate deception was documented with prosecutorial precision. "He won't expect us here," I said, reviewing the airport layout on my tablet. "Element of surprise gives us complete tactical advantage, plus legal jurisdiction. Caribbean financial crimes fall under international banking law, which means serious federal charges." Somewhere over the Atlantic, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment. Not just the physical flight, but the emotional distance I'd traveled from trusting father to strategic adversary. Thorne had forced this transformation through his greed and betrayal. The Caribbean airport buzzed with vacation energy when we landed at 2:30. Tourists in bright shirts and families with excited children created perfect cover for our more serious mission. We cleared customs without incident, our professional appearance and legitimate business documentation arousing no suspicion. Local transportation brought us to the international terminal where Thorne's family flight would arrive. Strategic positioning near the arrival gates gave us clear sightlines while maintaining distance for observation. "Arrival gate 7, scheduled for 4:45, Clement confirmed, checking his phone. I arranged the evidence portfolio in my carry-on bag, ensuring easy access for the confrontation ahead. Legal documents, bank records, signature analysis reports, everything needed to prove Thorne's criminal intent beyond any doubt. "Justice will finally be served," I said, watching passengers stream through the terminal. The prey was walking directly into the predator's carefully prepared trap. Flight 447 from San Francisco arrived precisely on schedule. Through the terminal's floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched passengers disembark onto the jet bridge, families eager to begin their Caribbean adventures. Among them, Thorne's distinctive silhouette appeared, confident, relaxed, believing his elaborate deception had succeeded perfectly. Celestea emerged next, holding Serena's hand, while Rowan carried a small backpack decorated with airplane pins. The children's excitement was infectious, their voices carrying across the arrival area as they marveled at the tropical heat visible through the windows. Thorne guided his family toward the customs area, his posture radiating satisfaction. He'd successfully manipulated his elderly father, executed sophisticated financial fraud, and secured what he believed would be uninterrupted access to my accounts while I remained stranded in Africa. Clement and I positioned ourselves directly in their path. The recognition hit Thorne like physical impact. His confident stride faltered, face draining of color, as his brain struggled to process an impossible sight. His mouth opened, then closed, producing no sound. "Dad?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. How are you here? Your flight was supposed to be to Namibia." The children noticed me next, their excited shouts of, "Grandpa!" echoing through the terminal before Celestea quietly shushed them, her eyes meeting mine with careful acknowledgement. "My plane landed on another continent, son." I kept my voice calm, controlled. "And this is my lawyer, Clement Price." Clement stepped forward with professional authority, briefcase in hand, business card extended toward Thorne with theatrical precision. "This is an airline mistake." Thorne's desperation was already showing. "I don't understand what's happening." "We understand perfectly," I replied. "We understand about the forged documents, about the offshore accounts, about your plan to strand me in Africa while you rob me blind." Thorne's face cycled through emotions: shock, denial, growing panic, desperate calculation. The confident manipulator was disintegrating before his own family's eyes. "You're confused, Dad. Maybe the stress of travel. The only confusion was mine, believing you'd actually changed." I gestured toward Clement. Fortunately, legal documentation clarifies everything beautifully. Celestea maintained careful distance, protecting the children from understanding the full scope of their father's betrayal while subtly positioning herself closer to my side of the confrontation. "Daddy, why does Grandpa look angry?" Serena's innocent question highlighted the destruction Thorne had brought to our family. The terminal's bustling vacation atmosphere continued around us, but our small circle had become an island of reckoning where decades of manipulation would finally face consequences. "Let's discuss this privately," Clement suggested, his legal authority cutting through Thorne's stammering protests. The predator had walked directly into Justice's waiting arms. 20 minutes later, we sat in a Caribbean police station that smelled of strong coffee and tropical humidity. The taxi ride from the airport had been suffocating, Thorne's desperate explanations bouncing off the windows like trapped insects, while Celestea quietly comforted the confused children. Officer Martinez, a professional woman in her 40s, examined our evidence portfolio with the methodical attention of someone who'd handled international tourist crimes before. Clement's presentation was masterful. Each forged document, every unauthorized bank transfer, the timeline of deception laid out with prosecutorial precision. "Here's documented proof of financial fraud exceeding $85,000, Clement said, sliding official bank records across the desk. "Forged signatures on power of attorney documents, unauthorized offshore account transfers, and conspiracy to strand the victim in Africa while executing the theft." Thorne sat slumped in his chair, the confident manipulator reduced to a sweating, desperate man watching his elaborate scheme collapse in real time. "Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. My father is elderly, sometimes confused about financial matters." "The signatures don't match," Officer Martinez interrupted, comparing documents with clinical efficiency. "Your father's actual signature versus these authorizations show clear forgery. Plus, we have testimony from your wife about the deceptive travel arrangements." I watched my son's face cycle through denial, bargaining, and growing panic as the evidence mounted against him. "My son planned to have me murdered through abandonment," I stated calmly. "While I was stranded without return transportation in Namibia, he intended to clean out my life savings." "That's insane! Dad, how can you accuse me of—" "Because the evidence speaks louder than your protests," Clement interjected, producing the final documents. "International banking fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit theft by deception. These are federal crimes with serious consequences." Officer Martinez made notes while reviewing the case materials. "Mr. Goodwin, we'll need to coordinate with U.S. financial crime authorities for full prosecution. This involves multiple jurisdictions and substantial monetary amounts." The administrative process took another hour: formal complaint filing, evidence authentication, coordination with Chicago authorities. Throughout it all, Thorne alternated between desperate denials and attempts to manipulate family emotions. "Think about your grandchildren," he pleaded during a break in procedures. "How will this affect Rowan and Serena?" "I am thinking about them," I replied. "They deserve protection from a father who would murder his own parent for money." By 6:30, arrest warrants had been issued and international cooperation protocols initiated. Officer Martinez closed the file with professional satisfaction. "We'll execute the warrant at your hotel accommodation this evening. The suspect will be taken into custody pending extradition proceedings." Outside the station, the Caribbean sunset painted everything in shades of justice. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations with grandchildren and complex family healing. Tonight would bring consequences 40 years in the making. The hotel lobby buzzed with vacation energy as families in bright clothes planned evening activities. Officer Martinez and two colleagues arrived with quiet professionalism, their presence drawing curious glances from tourists who had no idea they were witnessing the culmination of an international fraud case. Clement and I positioned ourselves near the elevators, legal observers to ensure proper procedures. Upstairs, Celestea had prepared the children as much as possible, explaining that Daddy had made serious mistakes and would need to go away for a while to face consequences. Room 317 felt smaller with 6 adults inside. Thorne sat on the bed's edge, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Rowan and Serena huddled close to their mother, sensing the gravity without understanding its scope. Thorne Goodwin, you are under arrest for international financial fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and identity forgery. Officer Martinez's voice carried official authority that made the charges sound as serious as they were. Daddy? Serena's small voice cut through the legal formality. Why are the police here? Thorne's final manipulation attempt focused on the children's confusion. Kids, Grandpa is being very mean to Daddy. He doesn't want us to be a family anymore. Celestea's protective instincts flared immediately. Thorne, don't you dare involve them in your crimes. Mommy, what crimes? Rowan asked, his 10-year-old mind trying to process adult concepts beyond his comprehension. The handcuffs clicked with metallic finality. Thorne's wrists, which had signed forged documents and planned elaborate deceptions, were now secured behind his back with law enforcement precision. Everything will be okay, Celestea told the children, though her voice trembled with uncertainty about their future. Grandpa loves you very much, and so do I. As police escorted Thorne toward the door, he made one last desperate appeal. Dad, please, think about what this does to your legacy, to the family name. I met his eyes with calm resolve. My legacy is protecting innocence from predators, even when the predator is my own son. The door closed behind them with quiet finality. Through the window, we watched police vehicles disappear into tropical darkness, carrying away the man who had tried to destroy everything I'd built over a lifetime. Serena crawled into my lap, her small arms wrapping around my neck with trusting affection. Grandpa, will you still tell me stories about elephants? Always, sweetheart, always. Morning brought clarity and the professional satisfaction of loose ends being properly tied. While Celestea helped the children process yesterday's trauma through art therapy by the pool, I sat in the hotel's business center, coordinating my future with methodical precision. The video conference with my Chicago notary proceeded smoothly, tropical sunlight streaming through windows as I legally restructured 40 years of accumulated wealth. All assets transferred to the Children's Protection Foundation, I stated clearly for the recording, with specific provisions for my grandchildren's education and welfare, administered through their mother, legal documentation that would protect my legacy from any future manipulation by Thorne or his associates. Even if he somehow challenged the criminal charges, he would never again have access to resources I'd worked a lifetime to accumulate. Next came the travel arrangements I should have made months ago. Finally booking Namibia, I told the enthusiastic travel agent. But this time for authentic adventure, not family deception. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thorne's elaborate lie about African safari had given me the perfect idea for genuine retirement exploration. 3 weeks in the Namib desert, photographing wildlife and watching ancient sunrises over landscapes that had existed long before family betrayals and would continue long after. Poolside, Celestea was helping Rowan create a collage while Serena painted tropical fish with intense concentration. The children's resilience amazed me, yesterday's trauma already being processed through creativity and maternal love. The foundation will ensure their education and security, I explained to Celestea during a quiet moment. Regardless of what happens with Thorne's legal situation, you'll never need to worry about their futures. Her gratitude was quiet but profound. You saved us all, Orin, from years of manipulation and financial insecurity. Later, walking alone on the Caribbean beach where this confrontation had unfolded, I reflected on the complex nature of justice. Family relationships destroyed, but innocence protected. Trust betrayed, but integrity maintained. A son lost, but grandchildren secured. My phone contained 3 text messages, one from Officer Martinez confirming Thorne's transfer to U.S. custody, one from Clement updating legal proceedings, and one from a Namibian safari guide confirming reservations for next month. The sunset painted the ocean in shades of possibility. Tomorrow, we would fly back to Chicago, Celestea and the children to begin rebuilding their lives, me to begin the retirement adventure I'd always planned. Sometimes justice comes with a price, but sometimes that price is exactly what freedom costs. At 65, I was finally free to live authentically, protected from manipulation, surrounded by people who valued integrity over inheritance. The predator was caged and the family was safe. That was worth everything. If you like this story, Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.